Welcome to another episode of the Bytes of Wisdom podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Ballone. As a general reminder, you'll start to see the rebranding of the podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and other platforms. Don't panic. We're just growing up. You can find out more information at byteswisdom.com. In this episode, Jeremy, Ossie, and I talk about the literal magic in the networking space, Tailscale. This is a company that built an amazing service and application in networking. It is secure by default, and it is simple as installing an app on your iPhone. We only scratched the surface here, but it's a real fun dive. If you're ready, we're ready. Let's roll.
So, we're here. We wanted to have an episode, and we're going to talk about Tailscale in a few seconds, or minutes or something. But I first wanted to kind of talk about the new name change, which is coming up. Well, or active in process. So, Ossie, why did we change the name? Tell our listeners.
Yeah, we got some feedback from people, and understandably, everybody thought that our podcast was heavily based on gaming. Although, if you trace it back to the first couple of episodes, there was some gaming discussion going on between
I
you two.
think literally the first episode.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
we haven't really.
Before I joined, but it's turned into something much more than that. And we thought it was probably a good time to rebrand. You don't get too many of those opportunities. And we wanted to come up with a name that better represented what we're all about. And what we want the podcast to be.
Makes sense. John, what do you think?
I mean, I think you and I came up with the original name, and we both liked it a lot. And very aspirational. And yeah, there was a little bit of video games involved in it. But yeah, it was hard for me to concede to the fact that the name immediately sounded like video games. You thought there's something about video games, and people simply wouldn't even listen. And not for nothing, we haven't talked about the logo yet, which I'm behind on. But
I didn't say anything.
The logo that we have with pixel art didn't do ourselves justice.
Yeah. And I think that theme, we played up too much on top of it. I still love the name. I'm not giving up the domain name no matter what.
It was a great name.
It still is.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit us. And when it doesn't fit what we're doing, you have to be clear. And I think Bytes of Wisdom does a good job of what we're trying to do, technology, talking, thinking, leadership, all the fun stuff we try to do. But hopefully people take something away from it. And maybe it's just little bites, but I think it'll be fun.
That's Bytes,
Bytes with
B-Y-T-E-S. B-Y-T-E-S, Bytes of
But
Wisdom.
he
But
dropped the pun saying it little bite.
Yes, I did.
But you could have meant
so-
little Bytes, B-Y-T-E-S.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
true.
There's plenty of puns ahead of us with that.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll stop picking on Jeremy's violent disagreement to make fun of his bites jokes, but
Oh,
I doubt that. I doubt it.
I'm going to disagree with you there.
I walked right into that one.
I want to agree with you, Jeremy, but I'm going to disagree. So, this topic came up in the last recording we did. Near the end, we were talking about what are some of the magic technologies, the things that we've used throughout the years where it just blows your mind. And we opened, I don't know how the actual edit's going to happen, but we opened talking a little bit about Sonos and how it just works. And near the end of the last episode, Tailscale came up. And Tailscale, for those of the folks that are listening that don't know, it is pretty much fucking magic. It's an agent that runs on a VPN app agent that will run on your iOS, your Android, your Windows, your Mac, your Linux, your Kubernetes. I think it'll run on a Pi-hole. It pretty much runs on everything. And there's just so many services and things that it builds on top of that base layer of it's just the VPN primitives. And I've only had one problem ever with Tailscale. One problem. And
You had a
problem with Tailscale. It was one problem.
Wait.
And it was extremely, I know where your answer is going to be. It was an extremely edge case. And it was because I bought an Apple TV. And I wanted to set up HomeKit with Home Assistant running on VMs. I was running a VM in a different location, and I stretched the network using Tailscale from the Apple TV. But I also have hue lights, and multicast isn't quite working. The exit nodes. It was a whole like crazy situation where I needed multicast to work for Apple for the HomeKit integration to work. I'm pretty sure I could get it to work.
You could use an MDNS responder and repeater, but you'd have to do it in software.
Yeah. So ultimately, I'm just going to end up buying this $150 mini PC and doing the same thing at the other house. But only time Tailscale never worked was fucking multicast, and I think that's a pretty good concession. If the multicast doesn't work, who the fuck cares? You shouldn't be using it anyway.
I'll save that one for a conversation later on why I agree with you violently, but I wish the rest of the world would catch up. Like, I want to go to step down into Tailscale, because we talk about it as pure magic, but I don't think it's understood at how much magic they do to make it work so well. So it's using simple encryption protocols. It's using standardized tools. It's using simple things, but they go to obscene lengths to make sure that things just go. And they have this thing called Magic DNS. And Magic DNS is turned into, if you were printed out, would probably be a 15-page blog post for Linux alone on how to consistently and reliably on Linux make sure DNS resolution happens as they expect, with systemd resolve, with NSS switches, with all the many complexities that comes with.
It's always a DNS problem and that phrase means something for a reason. So, but sorry, keep going.
But they did it right. They go into the system and they give you the flow chart. They give you their like if else statements of how Magic DNS on Linux works to provide that universal perception that the network just is going to do magic and it's just going to work. And they do that on Mac, they do that on Windows, they do that on iOS. And that goes so far to giving that impression and that feature set that, okay, no, I install it and it goes, because they're engineers that know that if the base system tools don't work, everybody's going to blame the tool and they're going to get rid of it.
So,
and by the way, go ahead. I was going to say, what they did to make it work is ridiculous, and Linux needs to do better.
So when you guys brought up Tailscale before, I'd never heard of it when we were doing the other recording, and I started doing a little research, and I'm like, okay, what is the magic bit to this? And I was like, it has to be the Magic DNS. So the encryption is not anything new.
It's WireGuard.
Right? It's WireGuard, right? The code, when you read about it, you read about how the code, it's very light amount of code compared to other VPN providers. And I was like, all right, what is it about this that makes it so there's an agent you install on your iOS device or your Windows device? Does it work on Windows?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I haven't found anything it doesn't work on.
I have.
So is it just the Magic DNS?
No. The Magic DNS.
No, hold on. When I ask that question, I mean, is that the main part that makes it,
it's the coordination
such a great
server,
application?
No, it's Magic DNS is a team that has understood the problems they are solving and solve them, and then move on to the next. They do the same thing with host detection and DERP in their protocol for routing through the internet. They do the same thing for punching through a NAT. Same relentless engineering. There's a finite state machine behind absolutely every network diagram I've ever seen behind them of how the protocol behaves, how it reacts and responds to changes in the environment. And so I use Magic DNS as the example because it's the easy one to expose, but every single thing I've come up to and seen them try to do is the same thing. Good engineering, understand the problem space, and then design a finite state machine to deal with it.
Okay, so give me. I mean, just generally good design and
I think it's
engineering.
Understanding what they're engineering and thinking about how they can leverage the protocols or what they're building given modern technologies, right? Because we talk about Magic DNS, you could talk about They're using Acme certificates now for automatic TLS, right? And that's great. That's amazing.
Well-
The fact that they have, software-defined policies, right? They were one of the first services that I saw that had extendable software-defined language and policy engine that just worked, right? It was bulletproof nearly, right? You don't need to set up a server to use the VPN, right? Because it just works.
Well, I think I was going to pull that part out. And I think that's what makes it magical for most people to get started. So, like, if we're going to go with what's the most magic with it, I think you just hit it on the head. Is I can just install it on 2 devices and make them work, and that's all enough. That's enough.
To make them work is sign in with SSO.
Yeah. So, like, I'll give the story is my friend is he runs a lab, and he was doing an interview for a new company, and he was about to go on to vacation to Vermont, and he's like, I have to have access to my lab, but I've never set up a VPN for it. And he's like, I need my lab. He's got an ESX box. He's got a Hyper-V. He's got all these he's like, but I can't miss the vacation, but I got an interview 2 days after I get back from vacation. And I'm expected to demo what I labbed up about the product space. And I go, just install Tailscale. And he goes, oh, I don't got time for, no, I'm literally texting him, install Tailscale. He installed it and then literally installed it on the server and left. Yeah. On his, and then he started installing it on his laptop. He's like, it's working from my phone in the fucking Uber.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the magic, is that it installed, then he installed the second part later, and how the fuck did this just work?
What the craziness is, yeah, exactly. But it's the same experience for every platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
You install it on the Windows box, you install it on your phone, and then you just go download an SSH application and connect to the IP address, and it fucking works.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And I think they're building off the relentless. So they have an identity that's attached to the machine, which that's how their cryptography goes. And they're just building on top of that. DNS was a build on top of that. They have an identity, they know the machine, they know the service. So they added service discovery. I have identities. I have a central server to control everything. And now I'm going to do identity and service discovery across hosts. Now they're doing DNS. Now they're doing funnels, which are my favorite bits, because they allow me as a developer to literally in VS Code go, I'm going to write a web server and make it publicly available in 13 seconds so I can have somebody else try it.
Yeah. So there's so many things I'd love to talk about with this. It definitely goes more than an hour. But Ossie, tell us about your experience, because I'm hoping that you read about it. Did you use it? Did you try it?
No, I haven't downloaded it yet. And for silly reasons, because I don't want to put it on company devices.
Oh, that's not a silly
that's
reason.
A good thing. That's a good reason.
Right. Which, you know what? It got me to start thinking that I might need to splurge and buy myself my own laptop. So
you got an Apple TV and a phone though? Like, it works for both.
Yeah. Actually, my Apple, I have an Apple TV, but it's in my daughter's room, but they're not using it. Yeah. So yeah, I can hook it up there. But I haven't tried it, but I did read up about it. And I was like, all right, this sounds legit. The only thing in reading up about it, I think it's VC backed, right? And as you stated, John, which I love that part of the episode, the last episode, you're like, it's free.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, if they ever had financial problems, this is the one company that like I'd be like, yo, take my money. Like, just take my money.
But hold on. That's where I was going with it. And listen, I'm not saying that's a detractor. Like, for, I think all of us, we're all in the technology industry. We'll pay for good stuff, but it could very well be a charge for it at any point. That's fine.
Actually, so I think that's a great segue into, they have, their business model is not apparent, but you can see it in their technology design. Their running costs and infrastructure costs for this are nominal because of what they did with the technology. So most like VPN providers have to, at some point in time, piggyback the packets at some point in time and route them and hairpin them in their front door and back out the other to get to the other client, because punching holes through NATs is hard. So you have a host behind a NAT, you have a host over here behind in a hotel. Their technology that gets past NATs is the best I've ever seen. They punch holes in NATs relentlessly. effectively, and then they keep them up. So what this means is for the end user experience, it feels fast because you don't have it going to some AWS server that's controlled by them. But more importantly is they don't incur the cost of paying for those packets much. They do for orchestration, so they have everything go back to their main data centers for orchestration and basically solving the graph across the environment. But they don't pay as much for data as most VPN providers do. So they have a lot of money, they have a lot of VC, but their business model makes a lot of sense. They recently changed it, and so they made all features available to any tenant less than 3 people because they had trouble. They're like, look, we can't, converting a 3-person company wasn't a valuable proposition for them. Give it to them. And when they leave that company or move on, it's at a 100-person company. That's the people we want to bring us in the door, not a sales guy. And they do a good job. And second note on why I'm not afraid of this company. Their clients are all open source, except for the Windows ones, which can't be because of the licensing with Windows. And there's an entirely open source implementation called Headscale. Headscale was a reverse engineered implementation of their server component that is not fully redundant. It allows you to run no interaction components, their entire software stack. The guy did such a good job, they hired him and allow him to release updates as long as he does it on his own time. So Headscale's fun. Don't do it. It's not worth the time because it does it a lot more. It needs a lot more work.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that for years, you're right, buddy. For years, we've been hearing that VPNs are dying, technology and products are dead, but I don't know about that. I think the one thing that when I started researching Tailscale, the one thing that became apparent is that maybe in the enterprise space, VPNs take a hit, right? But for the consumer space, I think that's where the VPN market is going to take off. They're targeting by 2026, it's going to be like a $77 billion market. Yeah, that's just an interesting take that I came across when I started looking at like VPNs versus zero trust networking, which I think for enterprises and for companies, they'll probably shift over to zero trust more so than VPN. But regular consumers are starting to get really smart and savvy about security. And this solves 2 problems, right? It's the VPN problem, but also you can have connectivity to your home devices, that's different, right? That's something that's not readily been available.
I agree. And when you integrate it with a custom domain, like a custom SSO. So for me, for example, I integrated it with my iCloud custom domain. I just log in with my Apple ID, but it's using a custom domain. So anyone that's using that domain that's my family URL. And we can now just share links between each other if we want to share services on our own. So my other brother's network. Oh, he's got something he wants to share with me. He just shares the link and gives me access and it just works.
Nice.
So I'm going to challenge you, Ossie, on this idea because
boy.
I'm going
Here we
to,
go.
well, no, it's actually more about the misconception, I think, around zero trust. I think zero trust is pushed as the anti-VPN. I think it is not true. I think zero trust is about just changing the paradigm because you can't attach it to the VPN model that's in any infrastructure because it's all been crap. How many and so you have to ditch the name if you want to sell something in that space because if anybody thinks it's a VPN, they're like, oh shit, the networking team is going to fucking make me jump through hoops for some optimal protocol that is only going to work and it's going to require me to fucking bash my head against the wall every 15 minutes. Well, zero trust and Tailscale align perfectly. They enable you to not care about the boundary and do it at the application level. So I think that they are, while it is technically a VPN technology, I think it's just as much a zero trust setup and a zero trust forward model as doing TLS all the way between the application and the endpoint. It just happens to be a more complete solution around service discovery, service delivery, permissioning, and identity that I think is probably better than zero trust.
Yeah, I wasn't comparing Tailscale to Zero Trust. I was saying for years now they've been talking about VPN technologies dying off. And on the enterprise space, yeah, I think more companies are going to shift over to Zero Trust. But I think for the consumer, like something with VPNs are probably going to stay for the consumer, right? And then something like Tailscale, that's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think Zero Trust is just a different VPN. Just nobody wants us to call it that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different way to. Yeah, it absolutely is a different VPN, but it's branding. I think
Exactly.
zero trust as a concept meant something 5, 7, 8 years ago, whenever it first started being explained, because it was a different way to handle your um, pre-authentication, whatever you want to call it, your bootstrapping problem, right? Yeah, Tailscale took it a step further, and they took a technology that was extremely amazing, WireGuard, but was very hard to use. So before Tailscale, I think I set WireGuard up once, and it took me probably a whole weekend.
Wait. Whoa. Wait. I'm sorry.
Com-
What?
But again, remember the way I'm trying to do things is not the normal way that I
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. So there are reasons why it took me all weekend, but because I had multiple sites, I had things that I was doing inside different subnets. So like it was complex.
I was going to
Not
ask if you were setting it up in that room that you're recording, the infamous room.
no, it was actually I was setting it up in my this was a OpenStack implementation that I was trying to replicate, and I want it to be able to access the rack that I built at home, which mimicked the OpenStack implementation that was deployed at the company I worked at. And I wanted to obviously use Tailscale. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
No, it was good fun. Back in the day when I had a lot of time and didn't have kids, I got to hack out a bunch of stuff. And
So, and I think though the reason why you got such a reaction out of me is that WireGuard is so goddamn simple, but it's the infrastructure that it plugs into
WireGuard
that.
wasn't the problem. It was
Right.
integrating WireGuard
Yeah,
with everything
exactly.
else.
And that's the thing that Tailscale did so well. So they
Yes.
took the WireGuard, which is just a ton of endpoint
Yep.
and set up intelligently with good key and good strong cryptography, but they put it in the environment really well. They handled the system D. They handled the startup of on Mac and Windows. By pulling all of these other things together to make the seamless nature, they took a really good technology and they made it accessible.
Agreed.
Yay. But I wanted to poke into some of the stuff that I think is pretty amazing about the company right now, which is they're going exactly into what you're talking about, Ossie, which is more of the authorization, authentication, and more into the space of zero trust networking, where they're creating entire policy-based things that you can integrate your applications into so that you can take their strong identity and bring it through their entire infrastructure and present it back. So if you run a web server, you can use a web server and you can automatically get mutual TLS because the far side, the local side, if you set up a service between them. If you've got a client on the other end, you can guarantee the client's coming from a tailnet that's IP address that is authenticated and authorized, and it's been approved within the last 45 minutes. But they're now adding on top of that is secret, the ability to generate certificates on the demand. So you can run Nginx and whatnot, present certificates all the way back to your application, and they change pretty quick. But also authorization. So I can sit there and say like, hey, I have this incoming connection with header with blah. And now I know it's coming from Ossie. And my application state can do that. And now they're exposing an API that's locally on the box so that I can sit there and say, what is Ossie allowed to do? Is Ossie allowed to upload? Is he allowed to download? What permissions does Ossie have? And it's quite amazing how they're pulling all this together with a local agent that it gives all this context. I think they're really onto something for the enterprise. I hope they continue to get the draw that they should be because they're solving a lot of problems. But
Oh,
they're
are you
gonna
about to break my heart?
they're gonna piss everybody off. Every engineer that's been running HashiCorp Vault, everybody that has their special snowflake, that's the problem with them. They're solving so many problems. They're attacking so many different things. I actually think it's part that's going to be the hardest to get them in the door.
Tailscale?
Wait, can you expand on that a little
Yeah,
bit? Do you
expand
think
on that.
people-
I'd like to
people
know a
are
little
gonna-
bit more about what we think there.
So where they're going and where I see they're heading is that they're offering further services further up the stack. They're beyond the networking component to the point where you can integrate authentication and authorization into your application. As you start doing that, you're displacing very different vendors than remote access, service discovery, or anybody like that. You're talking HashiCorp Vault,
No,
KMS.
they're going to go out under anyway, so let's not
Right.
worry about
Well,
that.
KMS, Ping Federate, your identity provider. At some point in time, they're going to have the authorization. They're going to, it's just a weird world to be playing in. They're going to be, for lack of a better word, pinging a lot of people's Wheaties in
Yeah,
infrastructure.
I agree with that. I mean, my biggest worry with them is that they'll just get acquired.
Please don't let it be Cisco. Please don't let it
It
be.
might be a lot of companies.
Right, they are. They're
They,
absolutely.
they took
get
100
acquired.
billion. They're expensive now. And
They're going to get acquired. We all know that.
who's their investors? I haven't looked at it recently. They took 100 million, so you got some
That's okay.
runway.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Tailscale, I've only ever used it as a personal, in my personal life. I never actually have seen it in the enterprise. It looks amazing. So but I do think it takes a certain level of engineering on the back end to take advantage of it. 100%.
I actually think, not going to say this out loud, well, I'm saying it out loud right now. I think they'd be better integrated with a cloud provider.
What do you mean? Give us an example.
Microsoft. If Microsoft owns them, holy bejesus. This kind of simplicity of controlling the network and being able to distribute it where they need to.
Jeremy, you're blasphemy.
I know, but wouldn't you want that?
Yeah.
I mean, it
Absolutely.
basically means on-prem, off-prem migration basically doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they were integrated with a cloud provider, you're absolutely right. At that point, you could be, if you do it in a certain way, you could effectively have compute anywhere. And yeah. And just say, okay, you have compute on-prem. Don't worry about it. You're not going to have to do anything ridiculous. Just load it up in Tailscale and it'll become available based on the permissions that you set.
Right. Yeah. But I'm now, while I'm talking out loud, it also means that you can go anywhere, and cloud providers don't like you being able to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
But
Jeremy, I was going to ask, are you talking about integration with a cloud provider, or are you saying acquired by a cloud provider?
Yes, either one. Like they have a natural integration with a cloud provider because you can just run it yourself and it makes it really easy. But if it was off the shelf with a cloud provider and you didn't have to deploy it and it was just auto magic, so that if you basically run any service inside of Azure, it automatically joins your Tailscale tailnet. And every tenant inside of your Azure tenant is automatically inside of a Tailscale tenant. Then that tenant can just extend to Oracle Cloud within minutes by deploying an agent. You can do on-prem. You can sit there and have all these integrations. And then you sit there and say like, hey, we haven't gone through the authorization bits, but then you can sit there and say like, Ossie's laptop is permission to administer this tenant and he can do an elevated rights and be able to SSH to it, which they do have that ability. So, and what that means is that it just means that the cloud can extend anywhere. And there's no networking bullshit. It just works because that's their magic. And right now, one of the hard things I think is that some companies have is how do I get my workload over there without killing it, without having to redesign it, without having to rethink about it. I installed Tailscale on everything and now everything can see everything. I got Magic DNS fixing my DNS so I don't have to deal with that problem nightmare anymore. Oh, great. I'm going to take half of app A and move it into Azure tenant while I leave the database behind because I haven't figured out how to migrate that yet. Well, great. Now I'm going to migrate the database to the next scheduled maintenance where I'm going to put it in Azure. Or the opposite, I'm going to move it between cloud. I think, talking out loud, I think that Tailscale makes you truly cloud agnostic for workloads that aren't anywhere where you control the VM in the network.
if Microsoft requires them, there goes it being free.
I don't know. I mean, GitHub's still free.
No, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know the new Microsoft in that regard. But I do know that they will enshittification it.
That could very well.
what?
Enshittification.
Shitification. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
It's actually becoming a thing. Enshittification is where things have to get shitty over time because people have to change things. They have to modify them. They have to put their mark on them. And invariably after a while, you have people that shouldn't be making their mark on things, adding it.
Well, I think that's the potential downside, but the what could potentially happen to Tailscale, right? If they get acquired, some big company's going to get in there and try to play around with it and change it and take it from being a good product to a shitty product, or to a less good product. Maybe not shitty.
One of the core investors is one of the people that was very early in Google, Brad Patrick. What's his name? Fitz something.
I don't know if he's an investor, but he worked there.
He was one of the co-founders.
Oh, okay.
Or very early.
Yeah.
They gave him shares, I'm sure, in order to get him out.
Oh, he's not there anymore?
He's there. No, they gave him shares to get him out of Google.
Got
so
it.
he was basically one of the primary devs. He was the responsible
He
for
wrote
HTTP.
Go. Yeah, he was one of the primary Go. Yeah.
And the Tailscale's all Go. So they pulled him out. He was responsible for the HTTP server client library. Brilliant guy, but ruthless engineer. And what I mean by that is he designs great tech. And he's still there. And when he's not there, I'll get worried.
Yeah. He's one of those guys that was he the LiveJournal? Was that?
Yep.
He was Memcache.
Yep.
Yeah. I met him once at, I think was it a Gopher? Is that the Go?
Yeah, that's the Gopher.
Yeah.
GopherCon.
GopherCon. Yeah. GopherCon. So, Jeremy, tell me how you use Tailscale. You've been using it a lot longer than me.
So I run my networks very different than most people. I don't trust anything in my house. My house Wi-Fi is untrusted. It's got a password on it, but I don't trust anything. I consider it just the same as the internet. Everything is run behind Tailscale in an overlay globally. So for me, my family, my kids, all my devices, everything is Tailscale, has been for the last. I do know about your multicast problem. I don't have that problem because I do MDNS responder on one side of my network. So I do have a part of my network that is I have to trust in order to do home automation, and that is sitting off a dedicated separate VLAN off of the side of Intel NUC. But other than that, pardon me, I'm so sorry. Everything is behind Tailscale globally. I do selective routing when I'm in weird countries, or I want to give a shit of where I do it. So I have a Apple script to enable Apple shortcuts to enable some changes to my iPhone or my iPad so that I will guarantee routing out of my home address versus locally. So I'll do a more full VPN. But yeah, other than that, it's all Tailscale except for video. I don't do any high bandwidth video through it. It would be fine if I did, but I have the Samsung TV problem that John was talking about earlier. But I have a Samsung the frames, and I like the menus, and I like to be able to see the artwork that it displays because that's how my house is laid out. And I have to use the native tools in order to get that. So yeah, everything is Tailscale. My kids have Tailscale deployed. I have Tailscale. My wife has Tailscale. Their laptops all have Tailscale. I'm excited to. It looks like they're adding MDM feature sets so that I can deploy upgrades to it if I have my flight DM system.
Really?
So, yeah. Yeah. I've gone a little too far.
But
yeah.
That's awesome.
But yes, if you're on my network, like you come and join my house, you can't see anything I care about.
Which makes a lot of sense, especially in modern days where, I mean, at that point, why do you even have a password on your... You just don't want the random people just using your
because internet. I still like my bandwidth.
Oh, what? You don't have Comcast where you're just giving bandwidth out to everyone for free?
I do not. I don't have I have an ONT that runs Ethernet to my own router, and then from there I go good.
Mm-hmm. He's just trolling you, John. He's trolling you.
No, I know. Yeah. My fiber will be delivered here by Sunday.
Are you sure? I remember that like from episode 3.
Killing me, Ossie. Killing me.
So I also use Tailscale to share files with friends. So I have a Synology, and that Synology is not on the internet. And if you need to, we want to share things and we don't want to put it on some cloud provider, I do trust iCloud. I am so far into the Apple world that I
You
don't know
have
how
to.
not to be. And on top of that, I can give access to anybody that wants to share files with me, give them a permissions, create an account. I don't have the full tooling hooked up into Tailscale. That doesn't matter. I have to create 2 accounts and then send them one link in Tailscale and they can access the file share. And I've done that a couple times. Particularly my wife likes it when she wants to share content with family members and stuff that we would normally not put up in, like, hey, we're working on a photo album, blah, 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 from who knows how long ago.
Is do you use Tailscale only on a single account, or do you have separate like user accounts? Like, does everyone connect to your user account, or
No, so all my family don't have a login. They use one family login and I use a different one. I could there's no necessity for my family to have a different access path besides my family and then me. I have administrative rights, they have user level rights, and I do bifurcate them that way. So in other words, they can't make hosts available. They can't route everything back through the home network. I control all of that ability. I don't trust my kids. Most importantly, if my son's listening to this, it means I can also selectively pull all of his traffic back through our house to make sure I can see everything. But hey, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Does he listen?
poor son?
He wants to come on, but he's not willing to listen. So this will be an incentive to listen.
It's true. You can't, if you want to come on and talk, then you actually have to listen to at least one episode.
Mm-hmm.
My younger daughter was campaigning. She's like, "Oh, you should have me on." I was like, "Get out of here. What are you going to come on and talk about?"
Oh, Ossie, of course. No.
Right. That's exactly why she's not coming on.
Yeah, so the thing that I've gotten to use Tailscale more for lately is development. So I have a computer in the basement that I use for hosting various little projects. And one of the things that while we've been talking for the last 45 minutes, I'm going through their little tutorial to launch a GoLink server just to be able to have a short URL service. And the damn thing's awesome. And the only thing that you need to do is a Docker file. It's like 20 lines of, not a Docker file, Docker compose file with 20 lines of YAML. And it'll just launch a container that has an Ethernet interface to your tailnet. It's amazing.
What's really fun, if you want to run Google, I use GitHub Actions to join my tailnet, and it has a write permission to my Synology where it can deploy to a write-only SFTP service so that I get a copy of the built assets, but it never hits the public anything.
That's awesome. See, these are things I wish so many ways I can do that now that I'm probably going to mess around.
I should have just, I have a license to GitHub. I should just run the runner in my house, but it's so fucking convenient sometimes.
Yeah, the GitHub runner itself is actually quite easy to run. The problems I've always run, pun not intended, run it with it was honestly, it's generally the networking. Like it's something in a corporate network, an enterprise network, multiple. It's just easier. And if this probably would make it stupid easy.
There's literally Tailscale how to make GitHub runners easy.
Oh, nice.
It's one of those things where it just solves so many problems. Like you can just say, okay, I want to deploy it on-prem application. Sure. Okay. Here we go. How do I integrate it? No problem. Really like it for development. I also really love funnels for developments and sharing work with peers. So like if I write something and I can spin up a copy of it and I can literally create a tailnet address and present it out to somebody else. Well, let's go find out what John just saw on his screen.
I just saw this. I'm gonna drop it in chat so you guys can go to the link, so you guys go to the link. But what the fuck? How did I not know that this existed?
Yeah, it's built to native.
Incremental copy of large files over your tailnet, yes. Like SQL databases and whole XFS volumes and block devices.
Yes. Imagine ZFS with this.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I can imagine with this. That's fucking amazing. Live migrating fucking VMs over a tailnet.
Mm. They released some. So since we're still talking, they released some new features that I think are going to be awesome. One is I can create services and present them to other people now. So instead of giving you port level access, I can give you a full service and present them to anybody. Hints of it is that they're going to start offering that as a market-based system where you can have identity charging, usage counts, percentages. You can do whatever you want, and they will make sure that it's available to the customer anywhere in the globe.
And you pay them whatever to host your integrated application. It's brilliant.
I think it's WASM, but I don't know for sure. So I think you can even.
They're building the thing that I've always wanted to build.
Yes.
I just can never do the work. That's amazing.
So the other thing is for their enterprise features is they have full IPFix output for all flows, even though they never actually see the content. So because their agent will record counters of things going through and it will send telemetry of all the flows, and then you can turn it into full IPFix outputs in your tailnet delivered to your own infrastructure. It's literally end-to-end, east-west, full visibility that every security team would be drooling over. It is literally the best product I've come across in age.
So one of the crazy ideas that like went through my head when I saw Headscale was, why do you with Headscale and Tailscale, obviously for the clients, why do you need an SDN?
You don't.
Yeah. If you literally create a tailnet for every project inside of a cloud, then you don't need you could create tailnets. You can create basically, once you have programmable access, that's your SDN.
Well, we haven't even got to their microsegmentation story. Because what I don't think Headscale can do and what they're able to do in their pay product, and I do think this is not going to be the product that's going to ever make it into Headscale, is the solving of the graph. So what they do is they distribute policy down to every single endpoint that allows you to sit there and say, Ossie Monroe has access to these ports. And then it has a strong identity cryptographically assigned to any packets coming into that server port that says, this is confirmed to be Ossie, but it's heading to port 22. That's allowed. Port 443 isn't. And that's pushed down to the client. So you're getting a microsegmentation, like service, centrally managed, centrally distributed, all the way down to every single endpoint. Not only that, is they added a sudo-like capacity so that I can create an escalation or an increase in my permissions for a defined period of time, where it will sit there and say, like, you need access to prod? Sure. Here's how you can SSH into prod hosts. Here's how you can add a TCP connection to any UDP port, but it will be logged and you have to give a ticket number or some other jargon and some other authentication, and you will get an increased level of network level access to these services. That's goddamn awesome. You want to have a VPC in AWS that has no access for any administrator, but you have to escalate in some way, shape, or form and get permission to get there? Sounds great. They can do it. Natively integrated with a bunch of external tools.
Now all they need to do is just be able to export to a standard, audit format, and they can completely destroy. I'm sure they do it already, right?
They do.
Yeah.
So they took my favorite idea from Zscaler, Nanolog. And they basically distribute down a compressed, awesome log that you can hydrate into your system. It is basically CloudWatch on steroids because it actually has identity attached to it, not just IP address and source. It has all that, but it sits there and says, last authenticated user was Ossie Monroe, and it was a process X. If that's available. It's not always available on iOS and other mobile platforms, but you can know the process on most OSs.
So Tailscale's been out, what, you said 4 or 5 years now? Or maybe longer?
Maybe longer, yeah.
Yeah, 6, 7.
Why hasn't it? I mean, it sounds amazing, dude. Why hasn't it taken off more?
My belief, VPN.
What do you mean?
I think there's a stigma, and I didn't think they were building a core product that sounded like a VPN. And while it was pure magic and it solved really problems, it didn't solve all these next level enterprise problems. It just solved a networking problem. They are now, with the cash in the last 3 years, solving the next level of problems. So if I were to go, this is my impression. I don't know if this is factual. The first 5 years, the company was perfecting networking.
Mm-hmm.
And now for the last 3 years, they are perfecting what you can do with the right network.
Now, have you discovered all of these nice little features on your own, or are they marketing this thing properly?
No.
Right.
Well, says who? I mean, so that's a hard
I'm
thing.
going to say
That's
no
weird.
because I never get asked it. And so one of my metrics, so I'll give you the reason why I say that, is I get asked about zero trust products all the fucking time. And I have to often tell them about Tailscale. And I will hear about Zscaler, and I'll hear about Microsoft's conditional access policies and AWS's solutions. And then I'll hear about some random startup that's going to do some different zero trust stuff, some beyond corp model. And next to no one ever asked me about this. That's completely not a scientific, but that's been my impression.
Listen, I'll tell you this. Whenever I've looked up like VPN solutions, like if somebody asked me like, hey, what are the top 5 VPN solutions out there? Or even when I was looking for something new for myself, it doesn't even come up on a list, anybody's list. So yeah, I mean,
I love the company. I'm pissed at them right now.
What? Why?
I've emailed them 3 times trying to frickin' be a partner.
Uh-huh.
Well, now you've said it and it's out there. So when we publish this, they're going to be calling you.
I'm going to start just Brad Fitzpatrick. I'm like, come on, dude. Why can't I find anybody in your company to help me out?
This short URL service is amazing.
Dude, there's so many things.
I just deployed it to my Linux box, and I'm like, it's already running on my fucking phone.
And by the way, that's not because you're on the same network.
No. No, in fact, this Linux box is in a different house. So I do think so. Looking at where they're going, I think having a marketplace for third-party applications and having the ability for SaaS applications to give you a private tenant-based instance of their app accessible on your tailnet, and then for an enterprise to be able to manage those policies of who has access to that app.
Well,
that's
what you're seeing is they're partnering with companies like ServiceNow so that your ServiceNow tenant is available on your tailnet. I think that's going to go farther, but that's the first is like, hey, you're worried about your software as a service provider. How do we tie your tenant in GitHub in ServiceNow so that nobody's accessing any other tenant?
right. So my question is what do you think, like, how or what do they need to do to penetrate into a large enterprise? I have my own opinions here. And what I mean by a large enterprise, I'm talking like more than a couple hundred people, which is pretty large, I think, for a Tailscale installation. I don't actually know.
They've actually talked about it. Some of their installations, they have installations of hundreds of thousands of servers, not desktops. They have great big deployments. They don't have mind share. They don't seem to have, like, here's my gut reaction. They don't seem to have a marketing department. They seem to have a reasonable sales department that knows how to sell a product to a customer that wants it. But they don't seem to have a marketing department. They don't seem to be able to be going out there and sit there and say like, hey, you Fortune 500 company, you should be using us. We solve a problem you might not even know you have. Or you downstream market in the sled market servicing every single fucking school in the country. How do you make it so that you can actually get your devices administered on every single school? Tailscale. they don't seem to have that. They don't seem to have that marketing. They seem to have salespeople, but I haven't seen it or heard from them. So I don't know. That's my gut reaction.
Well, if they have any marketing budget, they need to send it this way after we publish this.
I mean, I've had a love affair with this company for a long time.
So my take here is actually slightly different. I agree that the marketing stuff, and I get emails from a whole bunch of people saying, "Hey, do you want to test drive my product? Or my product's perfect for your enterprise. I know you run this and this, like because I've seen you talk about it or whatever, or you're on a meeting talking about using it." Never heard from Tailscale. Now, I don't think I think it's a marketing thing, or maybe it's they're not outwardly competing with the same types of markets. The thing I think that's actually going to be the most problematic is that their policy language, it's so powerful. It's so powerful, but you need to actually be a really, really astute, smart engineer to use it. And there isn't at least I haven't seen it yet, an easy way to manage the policies like you would manage policies in any other typical network. No, I'm not saying typical network people are, but you know what I mean.
Let me give Ossie the quick. This is a bigger foot gun than the one I left for other people to administer at one of the jobs I was at. This makes that gun look small, not very fast. It combines. So here, what the policy language does is it's a human readable JSON, HJSON. So comments are allowed with that. But what it does is allows you to define groups arbitrarily, membership arbitrarily, assign them network permissions arbitrarily, and then have the language that there is their server solve it in total for every single device in your network. So if I want to get granular enough to sit there and say, I'm going to say this IP address is allowed to this one 4 billion times, they will allow you to do it. They give you better semantics so that you don't have to do that. So good example is they allow you to tag host. You can have authoritative tags versus non-authoritative tags. So I can sit there and say, Ossie's responsible for the tag namespace, Monroe : and he can administer anything after Monroe : So you can add as much, you can set up a host and call it Monroe : SQL Server, Monroe : web, and you own that tag space and you can administer it. So you can set up a new host with that tag space. There's no limits to that. There's no imposed limits that are published. So what does that mean? Unbelievable complexity if you're trying to understand it. But really powerful. Gives you unbelievable control. But in the hands of people that don't understand grouping things together and limits, and that, hey, I have to manage this 2 years from now, just not do what's right now, it will be dangerous.
To put it a slightly different way, if you've ever worked with a network operations team that has problems with managing firewall policies, this doesn't fix that problem.
Right.
In fact, it makes it a lot more dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say this, the building blocks are there to not let that be the thing. Yeah, I could build a governance rule system on top of this with their tag system and their group system that could really be a next generation access control model that made sense and was solvable from beginning to end and manageable over time. It's there. They just exposed it to customers. They probably shouldn't have yet. They probably didn't have a choice at the same time.
Agreed. And I think, again, that to me, that's the biggest barrier for this to be widely adopted in a large enterprise. I'm not saying
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to, God, I wish you weren't right.
and the thing is, like, again, someone could build, and I hate myself for saying this, but a Windows component for server that mimics like Hyper-V or the Windows firewall. And if you just built it to that just spits out a Tailscale policy, it would be better than what they have.
Yeah. When you guys started talking about, like when we started talking about them potentially being acquired, I don't know why Palo Alto popped in my head.
Oh God, please don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably can't talk about that. No, Palo Alto, I use a lot of Palo Alto, but the thing about what worries me about acquiring is exactly what Jeremy said in the beginning, the enshittification. And the enshittification doesn't necessarily even need to be a negative thing, right? It's the fact that when you acquire a company, generally you're doing it because strategically you see it as part of your portfolio and you
Or a
want to,
threat.
or threat. But you then try to put things into it. You try to make it things that it originally wasn't. And over time, maybe the company itself or the culture, the ethos of the company itself starts to dissolve. There are companies that could buy this company that would make me feel all right. Apple would be amazing. But I don't
But I'd
think,
lose it on every thing else
But you would
besides
lose it.
Apple.
Yeah, you would lose it for every other one. But in reality, I mean, I think Cloudflare would be a great, if they need to get acquired, that'd be an interesting approach. There are companies
Actually,
that could.
Cloudflare would actually be interesting because
Cloudflare would make this fucking crazy. It would be going from like 0 to 1,000 if it went to Cloudflare. But yeah.
Well, just because of their distributed services they can make available, and you can deploy apps anywhere in cloud, and you basic. Okay, wait.
That's a whole nother hour.
Cloudflare's distributed WASM network, absolutely balls close to fucking everything.
To the
and
edge.
now they can now they have identity of every single client. They can get your data in and out, but they can cache it. They have an object store. They have a programmable model. They have a page model, and now they'll access. No, they should buy them. I'm not saying I'd like that, but it'd be fucking awesome.
Please, no one else other than Cloudflare buy them.
Particular, and I have one. Cisco, if you're listening, you don't want this company. You don't want them.
Broadcom, this isn't a good company for you.
No.
This is not revenue you want.
It's a funny. I was going to throw Broadcom out there just to troll you, John.
So, everyone's been listening. If you haven't used Tailscale, give it a try. You literally, it's like any other application on your phone. You download it, you install it, you log in. It's like maybe 4 clicks, 5 if it's a couple of help things that you got to go through. And you do the same thing on any other computer or any other device that you own. And it just works. You can share stuff between it. When you start to give it to other people, you bring people into your tailnet, or you get them to have their own tailnet. Now you can share with the link. You just send them a link and you can share stuff on your private network. Easy.
Do you remember that whole Docker, Dropbox thing? Oh, I got to send you a file. I got to.
Well, now they have the magic file transfer.
They do. And it's fast.
Magic file I'm just going to drop this. Magic file transfer, that functionality inside of the financial services would just,
especially with strong attestation of identity.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. I could use that.
Everyone could use that. And the thing that it's because they've made it so easy and it just works.
And the part I love about it, it's not just the product, it's great engineering. And that's the part that I love about what they built was great engineering led to a great product.
Great engineering, and they're not trying to nickel and dime you just by for using the product. They very easily could have just said, we're gonna funnel everything through a server in AWS, and we're just gonna charge you out this whatever for bandwidth. Yeah. They don't do that.
No.
And it's a better product because they don't do that.
Oh, I forgot. They added Tailnet Lock. Did I tell you about Tailnet Lock?
It locks everything down, right?
No, the keys are in control. Your control. They never have.
Yeah.
They never have your private key. So that was that was the feature when they did that. They're going after enterprise clients now.
Yeah. It's basically your I forget what it's called, but use my key.
Have you played with their SSH stuff yet?
Honestly, I've never. No, because I could just use Tailscale and SSH to the server. So I never understood why it's something different.
But why do you need the identity? You already know, so you're both sides.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
So when you run processes, you can have them extract an identity or a derivative identity and start SSHing on your behalf. You don't need to administer SSH keys. Tailscale is now administering your SSH keys.
I got about 5 different things now I need to tell my team to do. Yeah, I mean, that just solves key distribution for SFTP for me.
Yep.
Which is anyone that ever has to manage large customer deployments with SFTP, there's two problems. Three problems. Key distribution, ciphers, and the fact that you need to change IP addresses when you have to do anything.
I mean, SSH with a C8 back helps make that much more manageable, but this makes it even easier.
Yeah. I just found that they have an automatic plugin for Docker Desktop too, where it just every single thing you launch, it'll just put it on the tailnet.
So, Ossie, we were talking a while ago about programming a little bit. This is one of those things, like programming trying some things out. VS Code, have you tried VS Code yet? I think I suggested you did. Okay. Code has a plugin for this, so that as you're writing code, it will ask you and prompt you, would you like this to make this available for testing for anybody on your tailnet? So that you can write code natively and it just detects it. Because that's what I do for my day job sometimes.
I was just had a conversation with somebody about the ability to code with other people. Was it you, Jeremy? It might have been
come up a lot. I can't say the name because it's in the company.
Yeah, I've had a few conversations recently with people.
Yep.
And it might have been I think you might have brought it up, but then I think somebody else brought it up separately.
Yeah. It's one of our mutual friends at the office.
Yeah.
The best part about it, in my opinion, when it becomes integrated with the enterprise to a certain point for large software development companies, having the ability just to say, hey, send Jeremy a link when I'm at work, go look at this, go do a desk check with this, go do something, and just it's available. And I don't have to worry about firewall rules, the dev environment, does that shit have the right birthright rules? It's awesome. It's awesome. And then now that you can integrate your own apps and make your own integrations with it, you can build an application that basically launches shit in someone else's tailnet for them to check.
So,
dude, this sounds so amazing. It's guaranteed to get bought by somebody.
Yeah, honestly,
nothing good last.
Somebody's gonna. So one of my projects that it's on the back burner, PyKVM. Are you familiar with PyKVM, John?
No.
It's a Raspberry Pi KVM that you plug in. It is $14 to buy a compatible, cheap as hell, with a Wi-Fi Raspberry Pi that plugs into your VGA port. They have a version that wait, let me finish. That joins your Tailscale. KVM that joins your Tailscale. It's in chat.
I feel like someone's gonna go after the thin client market with this. Jeremy wants to start a business.
I actually didn't think about the thin client market, but
yeah, all you really need to do is have a fucking mini PC with Tailscale running on it, and you have end-to-end attestations. You don't care.
And you can send files. And it has that strong identity.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, you could single-handedly destroy Wise and all the other companies. Sorry, guys, I'm a customer.
This little thing right here. So my Intel NUC is the weakest link in my entire infrastructure is a Linux box that is ungodly powerful in my world.
Yeah. I mean, really the weakest link in any is the social. It's your family, right? Like, that's separate.
We had a good friend and so this is a fun story. Remember me and Ossie used to work for him at one point in time. He'll know who this is. He was so determined. He's like, no, you can't get into my house. And all I did was send his girlfriend a text message.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Because all I had to do was text a family member that was on his home network.
Oh, he hated you.
Oh, he was so pissed at me.
Yeah, he's so pissed at you. Just wait. Yeah. Just wait because eventually that's going to be not only that, but I'm going to text someone a message and it's going to automatically run like an application on their network. And I'm going to say, hi, as their homepage. That'll piss them off.
Yeah.
So I do think we're running up on time and I want to kind of close this out and be a little
running up on time.
Close.
We're running over.
Thanks.
The fucking microwave's going, Jeremy, with the milk. Come on.
So, John Ozzy, we've talked about this for a while. What do you think? Ozzy, you just learned about this product. What would you like? You want to go look at it more? What do you think now? Tell
Listen,
our audience what you think.
as we opened up this episode, I said, after you guys mentioned it, I started doing a little research on it. And I have to date never really had the desire to like go out and buy my own like laptop. I've always used company devices, and I'm like, okay, now this has piqued my interest. Like I might go out and get myself a laptop, right? So that I can install this and play around on it. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Dude, it sounds fascinating. Like you guys have dropped so many use cases in this last hour that I'm like, that's why I got to the point where I was like, is it marketing? Like, what is it? How we've not heard? Like
We're
when I say
shills. We're getting paid for this right now.
right. Cut
I'm
me
not.
in. It sounds so amazing that it should be more widespread. People should be talking about this everywhere. And that's amazing to me that they're not.
John?
Do we
Jeremy?
have just real quick, John, before you go, Jeremy, is our other mutual friend familiar with this product?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, to kind of close out, I think we've spent over an hour talking about an amazing product, and honestly, it's very hard to find flaws in this product. You actually have to use it for a long time and think about like how it can scale, and it's not even scale technology wise; it's really scale business wise. And the one aspect that I want to do a follow up on, and Jeremy, and Ozzy, I want you to think about this. This could be an interesting tool for adversaries, especially if you can drop a $20 Raspberry Pi device on any network.
Actually, I'm go ahead. Go ahead, see.
Going to
No,
disagree?
I was going to say,
If you disagree, he's going to do it.
I was going to say, I see where you're going with it, right? But how would it be different from all the other tools that are used by adversaries now and all the techniques that are used? Like, it's cool, but it's not. Just like what advantage is it giving to an adversary?
I'm going to take Ossie's statement and I'm going to steelman it. And I'm going to make the best argument of why and John's is they already have the networking component. They've been doing encryption at scale for the adversary for years. But what if the adversary uses it to sell access to clients, produces a universal overlay using the same technology, so that no longer is it a game of I control 20,000 nodes. It's a game of I contributed 20,000 nodes, so my allotment of time on those nodes is 20,000. But I can now rent time against a 400,000 node participating network where I get to run code and I get to select more paradigms because somebody's administering it at a higher level. So what I'm trying to give in trying to play out John's idea is, does this take the the corporatization of bad actors and give them a middleman that can start fettering access down to independent clients in a very, very effective way? I don't know if it's going to be this product, but I could see how I could steal every single idea of this and turn it into a very, very good marketplace to sell access to.
That makes sense. That I see. No knock on your idea, John, but that one I see.
That was his idea. That's just the best version I could make of it.
Yeah.
Decision, Tailscale, double thumbs up. If I had to give any kind of product recommendation, this is the best recommendation you're ever going to get from me.
Yeah, no, listen, when we close out that other episode, Jeremy was like top 3 wow moments in his life ever.
he didn't quite say that, but
I know.
Yes,
I
he
actually,
did.
it might be up there.
Yes,
it
he
was
did.
two. No,
Oh, he
I
said wild moments. Okay.
I said
Yeah,
in
he said
technology there was
wow,
two.
in technology. Yeah, he said this.
Did he
said,
did he
I
say
correct my
technology? It was
statement.
like
Yes.
married,
He said,
children's birth, Tailscale.
No, technology. Technology. I'm not getting him in trouble. No.
Yeah, no. Modems.
He said it was top three. You didn't list the three. You said, I correct my statement. This is in the top three of my wow technology moments in my life.
It was up there with the modem. The modem was slower
impressive.
burn because I didn't understand it.
Just
But I
hold
did.
on. Let's just pause on that statement. It was up there with the modem.
It is up there with the modem, dude.
I know that's an incredible statement. That's a really incredible statement.
I'm gonna go tweet that out to Brad because I'll be like, Tailscale. It's up there with my first use of the modem.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's got to be like an endorsement for the front page for them, right?
You could listen.
Jeremy says, yeah.
You could listen. You could have led with that. Yeah.
Like we know what we need to take that photo and then just create memes with it now.
Yeah.
He doesn't violently disagree about Tailnet.
You could have led with that statement, Jeremy, and we could have cut out 45 minutes of this, and it would have been just as effective.
At some point, I'm gonna blow that up on the route to your house somewhere. A couple $100 would be totally worth it for your commute. Like, why? What the? I violently disagree.
Right. Up there with the modem.
All right.
I think it's a good place to end, guys.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you for listening to another episode of the Bytes of Wisdom podcast. To support us, please subscribe on LinkedIn, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. We love feedback. You can reach us at feedback@byteswisdom.com. Until next time, stay curious.